Hi there. Welcome back to our kitchen. Today we're going to fix a frittata. And my family growing up, of course, we're just poor country people. We'd never heard of a frittata. What's a frittata? Well, we did something similar to a frittata. A frittata is just a dish that you fix with eggs, put it in the oven, and bake it until the eggs and the cheese are done. And at our house, we use whatever we have available. If it's the summer, you're going to see us take the squash from the garden. We want to use as much stuff from the garden as we can. We'll take that squash, cut it into tiny bite-sized pieces. We'll cut up a zucchini. If we've got fresh tomatoes, we'll take some of the tomatoes and take the seeds out and cut the tomato itself up. And no, I don't peel them. There's no chemicals in our garden. So I just take the seeds out, chop them up, and they'll go in it. Love to use fresh green onions out of the garden. But today I'm going to make a frittata for you, and we're going to post at the end of this the actual recipe that we use for this. But remember, a frittata is we use 8 eggs, and we'll use at least a cup of cheddar cheese and about 1/4 of a cup of mozzarella. And then we just use what we have on hand. We know what we like. And when you're cooking, you're going to know your taste. So maybe you won't like the spice I put in this. Use whatever spice you want, or don't put any spice in it at all. Remember, you're cooking for your family. Cook what you guys like. All right, now we're going to get on to making our frittata. Ready here for our frittata in this bowl. That is bok choy, not bok, but pak. It's the small variety. That's the last I'll have in the garden until my spring harvest comes in. And yes, I did raise that. This is tatsoi. That is oftentimes referred to as the Chinese vitamin green. On any frittata, you're going to have eggs. So here's my eggs. And if you see there, I have 8 eggs, which I'm going to be beating together and pouring over the ingredients in the skillet as we move forward. I have 6 ounces of sausage here. That's 6 ounces. These are some cherry tomatoes that we canned. They are some yellow pear cherry tomatoes canned with some sunrise bumblebee tomatoes. For some reason, when you're canning the sunrise bumblebee tomatoes, the red tends to leave the color of the tomato. I have 1/2 of a yellow sweet pepper. That's a sweet bell pepper. I have 1/2 of a medium Spanish yellow onion. You could use shallots if you wanted less strong taste in the frittata. Or you could use green onions, just whatever you want to do. Remember, this is something that you're cooking for yourself. You make it the way you want to eat it. I have here probably a little over a cup of portobello, baby portobello mushrooms. They're chopped in bite-sized chunks. I have about 3/4 of a cup of shredded sharp cheddar cheese. 1/2 of that will go in my egg mixture and the skillet to be stirred in, and then of course the remaining portion will go on as a topping. And I will show you that I'll put that topping on it as it goes into the oven. And with that topping, I have here about 1/4 a cup of shredded mozzarella cheese. That'll go on top as well. I have my salt, my pepper, and I have about 1/2 teaspoon of Italian seasoning. Now these are all the ingredients. So I'm going to get started here, and I'll be right back with you. When you're making a frittata, you're going to make it in the oven, so it's important to have a skillet that goes in the oven. I actually love, and I'm not sponsored or anything, but I actually love my green pan. The reason I like it is because things just slide out of it. It does have a ceramic coating on the inside, and I like the fact that if I'm starting some salmon fillets, for example, I like starting them on the stove, but I like finishing them in the oven. And the same thing with a steak. Sear the steak and put it in the oven to finish it. That skillet works great for that. can see, I have my oven preheated to 385. Once all my vegetables are cooked in my pan, I pour in my eggs. I'll be ready to put it in the oven. Now all I'm doing here is just browning my sausage, and you do not have to use sausage, and I'm going to say this again. You use what you really like. You can have some fresh baked ham, chop that up and put it in it. Maybe you prefer bacon. Fry up quite a few strips of bacon, and you'll want to crisp the bacon, lay it aside, and pour out the grease. Fortunately, this was some premium sausage, which means there's very little fat in it, but it's looking good. Okay, my sausage is browned. I'm ready now to throw in my onions. I'm going to put in the onions so that this gives the onions a chance to cook thoroughly before, because it doesn't take long in the oven, and I do prefer my onions be fully cooked, kind of translucent, before I put my egg mixture in. Alright, we've got the onions going. Now, the next thing we're going to throw in is we're going to throw in our mushrooms. And I have quite a few mushrooms, but the wife and I both love mushrooms. The mushrooms are going to release quite a bit of moisture, so I will maybe have to turn it up just a little bit to cook off the moisture. We'll just wait and see. But we'll give those a few minutes, and then we'll start adding other ingredients. To help these cook down, because it was getting kind of dry, I added about a tablespoon and a half of extra virgin olive oil. There just was not enough sausage grease in that pan. Dang, this stuff's looking good already, and here I am still adding other ingredients. That's half of a yellow bell pepper. That's going to have a lot of moisture in it too, which will cook down, but I knew it would not take it as long as it would the onions and the mushrooms. Gosh, I could put that on a slice of bread and make a meal out of it. But we don't want to do that. We're making a frittata. Okay, I've added my heirloom home canned Sunrise Bumblebee tomatoes and my little yellow pear tomatoes. Those are also heirlooms that we raised. And now I'm going to sprinkle on my seasoning. I know that might be too much seasoning for a lot of people, but trust me, it's going to give it a wonderful flavor. And if you do not like Italian seasoning, perhaps you prefer basil, just having basil in it, then do it that way. Remember, always, you're in control of what you eat and what you cook. Take a recipe, just use it as a roadmap, and make little detours or change seasonings as you see fit. As you see fit. Boy, it's hard to hold this thing and stir and talk. For some reason, I get to concentrating on what I'm doing and not holding the camera. As I was saying, for a lot of people that might be way too much seasoning, and maybe you don't like Italian seasoning. If you don't, then go in and use basil, use sage, use some rosemary. Use what you want to. The reason I like the Italian seasoning is it is a combination mixture. You have all of those ingredients I listed plus more, and it just gives it a wonderful flavor. Most of the moisture here, you can see as I move it back, it looks perfect. I really and truly wish you could smell how good it is. Now we're going to top it with our greens. Remember, that is tossed soy and pak choy. And I have roughly chopped about 1.5 cups between the two of them. Now remember, when you start cooking greens, they're going to shrink down totally. You do not think you'd like greens in your frittata? Leave them out. Remember, when you're making a frittata, you're making it yourself. You put what you want to in it. When you're doing a frittata, you just have to remember, you want to use the ingredients you want to. The main ingredient in a frittata is your eggs, and you don't even have to put cheese in it, but I can't imagine it without my cheese. But you're gonna put in what you want. I've chopped up red potatoes, fresh red potatoes from the garden, and put in there. We've used white potatoes. I've used sweet potatoes cut in chunks. You put in there what you want to. You know what you like. Don't depend on somebody else. You make it to suit you. Okay, I took a fork and I beat my eggs together. I've added in about half of my cheddar cheese, and my greens are beginning to slowly wilt down and cook down good. So the next thing is to take these 8 eggs here in a few minutes when the greens are a little closer to being done, and pour these eggs over top of this and put my toppings on it. Okay, my greens have wilted down really good. They still have a pretty green color, but that's because they're fresh. Now we're going to take these eggs with the cheese, and I'm just going to pour this over top of everything here. And I've just poured it over it. Now I'm going to turn this stove off. I'm going to take and move that around a little bit to make sure the cheese gets to the bottom. And the reason we want the cheese to get to the bottom is it will almost look like a cake when we take it out of the oven. All right. I'm generously applying the cheese to the top of the frittata. And I'm going to take on top of the cheddar, and I'm going to sprinkle some mozzarella. When I cook, I believe in layering flavors. The more flavors that you can have in something, to me, just seems to be that much better. I have some biscuits in this oven. We're just going to slide them up to the back. And now I have my frittata in there. We're going to set the timer for about 25 minutes, and then we'll take it out. Okay, our 25-minute time is up. Our cheese is browned nicely. We're going to let it set here in this pan and cool down for at least 10 minutes before I try to take it out. That'll give it a chance to set up good. Okay, there's our frittata. And true to the green pan, you might not can see it, but you will here in a second. It's very loose, and I can just take it and literally pour it out of the pan and put it on the plate. Okay, there it is. And a frittata is basically very similar to a quiche, except there's no crust. It's just an absolutely delicious way to fix a breakfast and get a little bit of everything. Greens, vegetables of all types, your cheese, etc. Of course, there's not a lot of carbs in it, so nothing wrong with some biscuits, some homemade apple cinnamon jelly, and some homemade apple butter. So it'll be a slice of frittata and a jelly biscuit. All right, it's time to have a bite of this frittata. And if you can see, it's chock full of goodies. It's basically a crustless egg pie. That's just what the old country people would call it, but I've always learned to call it a frittata. It's got plenty of flavor, and that's what I like. Anytime you're cooking something, always try to layer lots of flavors. I can taste the greens, I can taste the sausage, I can taste the eggs, the cheese, the peppers, the onions. You want lots of flavor, at least I do. I just enjoy that. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in today. You're going to have a message following this about our seed giveaway. All right, thanks, and stay tuned for the message coming up.